Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the Face Your Ears podcast. My name's Rich Bozick. I'm a voice teacher from New Jersey. I'm joined here with Justin Hoshella, producer extraordinaire, located in Michigan.
Yeah. Yes.
Michigan.
The Mitten State. We've only known each other 20-something years.
All right,
I don't know where that hesitation came from. Is it Michigan or is it Minnesota? I can't.
I was trying to think of something funny to say, but I like the Mitten State. I like that. Where are you in the mitten? Are you like near the thumb?
The thumb. I'm near the thumb. The crook of the thumb. Detroit. Hi, everybody. It's Justin. Nice to be with you again. Hi, Rich. How's it going?
Hello. Good to hear your voice again.
Thank you.
What's been going on? Update me. Update us.
We continue to be a 5-star podcast.
Oh, unbelievable.
And so one of the things that we didn't really know about when we started doing this podcast thing was the interesting information at our fingertips about this very podcast you're listening to right now. So we are able to go in and kind of see how things are going in terms of listens and how people are listening and so forth. So it's pretty cool. And we're seeing a lot of folks go to our website,
FaceYourEars.com?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
That's the one. I like to say www.faceyourears.com. It feels very rare in life that we get to say www. But anyway, FaceYourEars.com, www.faceyourears.com. So people are listening there.
Excellent.
Which is great, which is awesome.
We got the embedded player on the site.
Yeah, we've got the embedded player there. So you're always going to be able to catch the latest episode on our website, which is awesome because we've also got some other cool stuff on our website, which is great. The podcast, though, is also available on literally all major podcast platforms. So,
really?
Yeah.
Now, can you give me an example of two, maybe?
Two
other
examples?
Ones?
Okay.
Two examples.
Off the top of my head, two major podcast platforms. Number one, believe it or not, number one, Amazon Music.
Unbelievable.
And, hold on, Google Podcast.
Excellent. There you go.
There you go. So if you love to listen to podcasts on Amazon Music and Google or Google Podcasts, we've got you covered.
You can listen to the same episode on both if you want.
What?
Feel
compelled.
Go to the platform you like the best and fire it up. What's been going on with you with regard to your production and all your studio stuff? Give us an update.
One thing I recently did that was a lot of fun, that is something I have never done before, is a remix for a hip-hop song. I used to work at Apple. I met Stan at Apple. Anyway, Stan's a really great guy. He records as Flo Mega. You can find him on Apple Music. He does this really cool old school hip hop kind of thing, and it's great. And he just released some new stuff. He has a track on his latest album, EP, whatever you want to call it, called Universal Dent. And I did a remix of that in my sort of weird electronic kind of style. I mean, I don't know. I just sort of did what my gut told me to do. I just had fun with it.
Excellent. Is it out?
It's not out yet, but for me, it's just a project that was kind of a personal pet project, I guess, that I was working on. And it was risky for me because I'm like, I don't do this genre. I like the genre. I just don't necessarily write in it. And so I was nervous to see what he thought, and he loved it. So it was just kind of like this awesome moment for me recently, just in terms of recording and production and stuff like that, because I didn't know how it was going to land, because it's hard when you're working with somebody else's material. We've talked about that on this show. That's your baby. That's your project. You're very proud of it and protective of it. And so somebody comes along and is like, hey, I made a completely different mix of this song that you crafted. But he knew that going in. I was like, hey, I just want to just something kind of for my portfolio, put on my website, just something for fun. Like,
excellent. That sounds awesome. You know, this is a perfect segue about today's episode. Because guess what?
What?
Today, it's all about you, my friend. Today,
what?
I want
what?
to...
What?
It's not even your birthday.
It's not. Yeah.
But today, guys, everyone who's listening, I'm going to take some time here to get to know Justin Hochschild and get some deeper info on Justin Hochschild. That's what this episode's all about, his musical journey. So tell me about your music journey. How did you begin?
Well, where to begin? Where does the story begin? I think for me, musically, my story begins as a kid in elementary school and playing in the band.
How old were you?
I think I was 9, and that summer, my sister and I had signed up for band, and so before school had started, I believe we started lessons like once or twice a week, and from there, the journey began. And I'm sure my sister will listen to this at some point. And there's a sort of a funny story at the beginning of this, because when we started that band journey together, I signed up to play trumpet. And so this beautiful, shiny, wonderful trumpet arrived.
Nice.
And my sister laid eyes on it and was like, because the trombone that we had, I believe we got from some friends and used to be used as a planter, like the bell of the trombone. Like they literally had like a plant in it at some point.
Now, some of you out there might be like, now that's good use for a trombone. No, calm down, everyone. Calm down.
Yeah. But you know, this thing was just like rough. I mean, it worked. It was fine. They cleaned it up, whatever.
You basically you reclaimed that trombone. That was a reclaimed trombone, if I ever heard.
It basically was. It was like something you would find in like an antique store, repurposed or whatever. And anyway, she saw that and was like, how about no? And so my sister somehow, in her crafty ways, convinced me that the trumpet was like harder to play, or that the trombone was better for some reason or other. And so anyway, long story short, she convinced me that trombone was the better instrument.
So this is an older sister?
This is my older sister, yeah. So I got the better side of the deal, according to her. I got the better instrument, apparently. But yeah, we were a pretty musical family in that sense. I mean, she played more instruments than I did. She played flute, piano, she sang.
Nice. Did your parents play?
And trumpet. Yeah, my dad, he studied music. He is a French horn player. My mom, begrudgingly, I think, studied piano in her youth, but it wasn't really her thing. My older brother, is a musician as well. So.
That's awesome. So you started studying at a young age. Tell me about that evolution. What was next, I guess?
When I was around 14 or 15, I was very much into a lot of guitar-oriented rock. So for me at that time, it was bands like Nirvana, The Cure, Nine Inch Nails, Elastica was really big. They had just come out at that time. They were really like kind of rock oriented, but there was a lot of guitar around me in the music I listened to. And so I had a friend that played guitar. He had a guitar, and he kind of taught me some of the basics of how to play. And from there, I got my own guitar and started to learn some of my favorite songs.
Did you start on electric?
I guess so, yeah. The friend that I learned from at that time had an electric guitar, and so that was my first guitar.
Do you remember what kind of guitar was your first
I
guitar?
believe it was a Lotus. Google that, everyone. Lotus.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
I believe they were like $85 or
Yeah.
something. It was so
The youngins
bad.
in the audience might not know that, but yeah, maybe guitarists who've been around.
Yeah, I mean,
for a
it's
while.
on the same level as like a Fender Squire, but like less so in quality. Yeah, and then I later on got a 12-string Alvarez
That's a big jump.
acoustic guitar. Yeah, that was nice. And then, I was playing guitar for a while. Oh, Smashing Pumpkins. Oh my gosh, how can I forget? So they were another big guitar influence for me. And so those were the kinds of bands I think in that era that really appealed to me. So kind of that like adolescence period. So, again, like Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, The Cure, Garbage would be another one. So I think the theme with all of these bands is that there was definitely a strong guitar presence, but it wasn't necessarily the centerpiece. Like Steve Vai, like it's all about the guitar.
Yeah.
With the music I was listening to, it was just more of the tapestry, I guess, is the way to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, we all in our hearts probably wanted to be able to play like Steve Vai.
Yes.
Back in our day. If you haven't heard of Steve Vai, go Google this guy. It will blow your mind. It will blow your mind.
Your brain will melt. Just a warning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of what influenced my early days in sort of writing and guitar playing and my own music and everything like that. And then I would say as I kind of got to the latter part of my teenage years, kind of going into early adulthood, I got really into electronic music, more specifically industrial music.
What is industrial music?
Bands like Ministry. Ministry is probably one of the more better known bands out there in terms of industrial. Nine Inch Nails, obviously, is a really well known band.
Can you break it down, though, for our listeners? Like, what is industrial?
So industrial music, generally speaking, and this is just me, so you can Google this and argue on our social platforms if you want, but generally speaking, industrial music is it's almost like electronic music with a punk rock aesthetic is the way I would almost describe it. So basically it's a mixture of using some kind of dark texture in the bass, in the electronic synthesizer world, like the bass synth, and like really big drums, vital to industrial music. And usually the tone is dark or gritty in nature, hence the name industrial. And there's oftentimes guitar, like metal kind of sounding guitar, like chunky, like guitar. So
distorted,
yeah,
heavy
distorted,
guitars.
heavy guitar. Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of bands and whatnot. Can you boil it down to your top 3 musicians or bands that like really shaped you musically? I know it's hard to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what do you got?
I think the number one, like without doubt, is Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails. So that's my number one influence. I think back to when I was growing up, hearing Head Like a Hole for the first time. I was a kid. I think I was like literally 8 or 9 years old, something like that. So when young Justin was learning to play the trombone, Trent Reznor was belting out, "Bow down before the one you serve. You're going to get what you deserve." And I was taking that in and loving it. So yeah, I think Trent Reznor has always been someone that appealed to me. I loved the sound and I loved the aesthetic, and I just loved the idea of him sort of being a quote unquote one-man band and kind of doing all of the different things.
Yeah. Last thing I heard is he was doing film scores now and producing.
Yeah, he's a very prolific film composer now.
Who else influenced you?
Yeah, I think another big influence for me, another kind of musical hero, was Robert Smith of The Cure. Fun fact about me, listeners. Robert Smith was not only a musical inspiration, but a fashion inspiration for me.
Did you do the whole goth?
I did.
paint?
Oh, man. So
You did?
the latter part of my high school years, especially my senior year, I was like full on goth. Like I would sit in study hall. I remember I had this study hall. It was like 7th period, I want to say. And it was a silent study hall. And it was this giant classroom, like a lecture hall style classroom. So there's probably 75 or so kids in there. It's huge. And, you just sit there and do your homework or study or whatever. And I would use that time to put my makeup on because nobody could say anything. And so it was my like silent rebellion against the jocks and the jerks. Yeah, I was totally into the goth thing, but yeah, I would do that. And
looks like a far cry from where you're at now, my friend. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could bust out the eye paint again. I think
it's
it would
tough,
work with the beard.
man. Like if you have a beard, makeup, I don't know, it's tough to pull off. But yeah, Robert Smith, I think, was a big influence for me, especially around his lyric writing and sort of guitar playing and melody writing, things like that. So I just really, I think for me, that's what I loved about him and just the overall aesthetic of The Cure. I mean, when you hear The Cure, it's like nothing else, really. I don't know. Even though their albums are different, album to album, there's just something about his voice and just the way he writes and the sort of sounds that are evoked. Anyway. Somebody else that comes to mind for me is Kevin Key, without a doubt. So Kevin Key is an industrial musician. So Kevin Key is he's a producer, industrial musician. He's part of a band called Skinny Puppy, as well as other bands that I also listen to. And Skinny Puppy is very, very guttural, visceral, industrial music. Not for the faint of heart. So it's like the Turkish coffee of the music world. I don't know. Very, very it's a very acquired taste kind of thing. So yeah, Kevin Key is part of a band called Skinny Puppy. It's been around for 40 something years, and he has produced and or been a part of so many different projects and bands that I love. And the kind of stuff that he does, the sort of producing he does, is just magical and mystical to me. It's so intricate and interesting and diverse, and yeah, I think he's such an incredible artist too, and I just gravitate towards people like him that do what they do without compromise, and that they're not here to be a rock star or like have millions of fans and millions of dollars or something like that. They're just here to create really compelling, interesting art and music.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and so when I look at Kevin Key, he's one of my heroes in that sense, that he just creates some of the most compelling and interesting music that I have ever heard. So I just revere him. He's great.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Perhaps we can include some links to some of these artists in the description.
Sure. Look, if you want to listen to Skinny Puppy, more power to you. I challenge you, listener.
Put a few links to stuff you think, stuff that you really enjoy.
It's a good idea. I can throw in some links to some songs that I really like or have influenced me.
So you brought us up to the point of high school and what was happening there, and then eventually you went off to college. Where did you go? What did you study?
I guess before I go into that, I should say that in high school, like as I was learning guitar and everything, I was also very, very passionate about music theory and keyboard harmony. So I started to develop some keyboard skills as well as some knowledge around how harmony and key signatures and that.
I love this. You've mentioned theory in almost every episode.
I hope
and I hope my students are listening. See, it's not me. They probably were thinking I was going to be the one doing this.
Yeah.
It's you.
For me though, I do have to admit, I am someone that's drawn towards that sort of thing. Language, math, uh, logic, music fits into that. And so I was very attracted to music theory for that reason, is because it was very similar to those other kinds of systems that I was gravitating towards. And I found that as I was able to understand music theory, I was able to explore music. I had more freedom in a sense to explore and create. And so I was able to take some of the things I was hearing and listening to and start to create my own stuff that I like, because I had that foundation of music theory to build off of. And so you start to factor in technology, and that becomes a really powerful recipe, because while I can't necessarily play keyboard very well, I can play well enough to maybe program in some chords or some melodies and things like that. And then in the computer, the keyboard, I can, edit it and things like that. So I started to really go down that road and just be fascinated and fell in love with that. And so I found a major in music technology at Radford University. Radford is in southwestern Virginia. It is right next door to the Hokies at Virginia Tech over there in Blacksburg. So it's nestled down there in the New River Valley in Virginia. So my sister, who I mentioned earlier, was going to school there. And funny enough, my mom was teaching there at the time. And they had this really cool major that literally focused on the very thing I was interested in and passionate about, sort of combining like my love of music and music theory and then music technology.
Give us an idea of some of the stuff that you did for that kind of degree.
I did things such as recording. So learning how to record audio and MIDI into a computer and to edit and mix and master and share that material, kind of the end-to-end process of everything involved. For me, a big part of it was synthesis and sampling. So in the realm of electronic music, what that essentially means is creating compelling and interesting and unique sounds on a synthesizer or keyboard, like programming it, designing a sound essentially, and or doing that with a sample. So you can, sample a voice or a drum loop and manipulate it. So learning those sorts of techniques, and also learning how to navigate, compose, essentially use all the aspects of digital audio workstations. Callback, episode 2. So DAWs were very much a thing when I was in college. And so I learned how to use, at that time, it was Cubase, Logic. However, when I was in school, this is how old I am, Logic was not yet owned by Apple.
Oh, wow. Really?
So, yeah.
Was it a standalone company?
Yeah, it was a German company. So yeah, Logic used to be owned by eMagic. That's when I was learning how to use it. Multimedia, it's funny because I remember multimedia was like a buzzword back then. So we're talking late 90s, early 2000s. So, I learned how to create multimedia animations, essentially with, music to accompany it. That sort of thing was very up and coming at the time. So
awesome.
I built some amazing relationships there. I met my dear friend John when I went there. He was a professor of mine, and we became fast friends. And he is a dear friend to this day. So he was always a great inspiration for me musically. He was always a great friend. I think we saw eye to eye on a lot of things, and music was just one of those things. So. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you had a good experience there, and you are utilizing a lot of that information these days. I want to know, what have you been listening to lately that has influenced you that's new to you?
Something that surprised me that I was listening to recently was Killing Joke.
Yes, they were on tour with Tool.
Yes.
I do believe not. It
About
was like
a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago or 2 years ago, pre-pandemic.
Yeah. 2019. That's right.
And it's funny because I went to the show with a bunch of friends in Newark, and we opted to skip the opening band, which I think now was a mistake, because now when you found that band, you sent me the link and I listened to it and I was like, this is awesome.
Mm.
So anyways, go on.
Yeah, so Killing Joke is great. I caught a bit, I want to say the latter half of their set when I saw Tool in 2019. And it was great. I was like, whoa, this band's really cool. So yeah, I've been listening to them. They're one band that I've been listening to. And I have also been trying to think. Oh, Lizzo's new album. So Lizzo's new album is called Special. So my wife's been listening to it, and she adores it. And so it's just so great to hear my wife talk about it and just see her spirits lift. And so I picked it up on vinyl, and I've listened to it beginning to end twice in the past couple of days. It's a really, really well produced album. It's excellent. And it's just a great sort of snapshot of a lot of different types of songs fitting together really well. Nice. And so I just can't get enough of that album. It's really cool.
Yeah, with Lizzo, I have a few students who've brought some of her songs in and have worked on a few things. I haven't sat down and listened to like an extended album yet,
cool.
But I'm kind of becoming aware.
Cool. And then another one would be Front 242. So Front 242 is in the same sort of camp as Skinny Puppy in being sort of these like godfathers of industrial music. So Skinny Puppy is more clang metal, kind of growly, angry industrial. Front 242, when I think about them, they're definitely more electronic. So these guys would have like stacks and stacks of synthesizers. But again, they kind of have this like punk rock aggressive aesthetic to them, but just with a bunch of synthesizers. So I think in my early young years, that sound didn't appeal to me as much because I didn't understand it. But I've been listening to their earlier stuff from the early 80s and so forth, and it's been great. It's one of the things I enjoy about getting older is the ability to enjoy music that once upon a time I didn't quite understand, but that's a good example of it. But Front 242, so one of their albums, Geography, is a good example. I think that was like 82 or 83, something like that.
Excellent. We'll have to link some of that stuff in the description as well.
Oh, one other band I do want to mention that I got into. My sister actually got me a gift card to go to Third Man Records here in Detroit. It's a really great vinyl record store run by Jack White of the White Stripes. They also press records. It's like a record pressing plant. We went there.
Yeah, we did. That was cool.
So yeah, I went there and I picked up a copy of the Detroit Cobras debut album.
Never heard of the Detroit Cobras.
Yeah, it's called Mink, Rat, or Rabbit. And it's an awesome album. So the Detroit Cobras are from, as you guessed it, Detroit. And they just have a really interesting, really cool sound. It's kind of this blend of like rock and R&B and maybe a dash of punk a little. I don't know. It's very, very cool. So unfortunately, the lead singer of that band died this year. So several months ago. And so that's kind of how they sort of got onto my radar. And I just recently went to Third Man Records, and that album is pressed there. And so I was like, oh, I've been meaning to check this band out. So I finally did, and they're amazing. check them out. Detroit Cobras.
Excellent. This has been a great conversation so far. I want to ask you one last question here to close it up here slowly. But I wanted to ask you, what are your hopes for the future of music? Or maybe we could be more specific of your place in music.
On a practical level, I feel as though I'm building momentum in terms of completing music and getting out of this trap of not completing things and sort of staying in that draft stage. And so I feel as though I'm gaining momentum and completing something. I think a lot of times we have a lot of different files on our computer of different projects that are like, oh, this 8-bar loop sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
But, going outside of that. So that's something for me that I feel I've grown in, and I'm gaining momentum in. So that's one side of it, just from like a practical sort of personal side. I think from a release standpoint, one of my hopes and dreams is to have my music used in some sort of sync capacity. So what does that mean? So sync licensing is essentially music being used within a visual medium. So that could be a commercial, it could be a TV show, it could be a movie, it could be a YouTube video, it could be a podcast, whatever. So it's funny, I often get feedback from people that my music sounds very cinematic, or like it could be in a movie or something like that. And so I've always been attracted to that idea of having my music placed in some kind of visual medium. So that's something that would be pretty amazing. And then the last thing is just continuing to work with really great people. So I've been fortunate enough to have some really great clients in terms of producing their music, and other clients and teaching them how to produce and so forth. And so that's something that I hope to be able to contribute to the larger sphere of music outside of just making music myself. That's pretty much what I got.
Excellent. Thank you for this. Thank you for letting us in.
Yeah.
And can you tell us your websites, where to find you?
Yes. You can find me at, I get to say it again, www.manmaderandom.com. You can also find me on Instagram, first initial, last name, J. Hoshella. And I'm on youtube.com, so you can search Man-Made Random and find me there. There's also links on my main website as well, so makes it easy.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Face Your Ears podcast. We hope you found it entertaining and informative. Check us out on social media and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. For more information related to our podcast, head on over to www.faceyourears.com. Links can be found in the show description. And remember, whether you're a musician just starting out or a seasoned professional looking to talk shop, it's time to face your ears.